need the.
I'm doing this my way.
He a legend, he a legend, he a legend. He a legend, he a legend, he a legend.
Talking on it though, then
He
you
a
can't bring
legend.
it up later.
Welcome to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league of items. Welcome to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league of items.
What's up, everybody? It's Pikel with League of Items, and today we're going to discuss the play-in stage groups and the main event groups. The group stage groups, whatever you want to call them. So we're going to go pretty fast through this, I hope. I have some information about these other teams, but not a ton. I have information about these teams. Some of them I have a lot, some of them I have none. So we'll start in Group A. First up, Team Liquid. Team Liquid, obviously, we have Impact, Broxa, Jensen, Tactical, CoreJJ, and Jat is their new coach. In terms of Worlds experience, Impact has won a World Championship, Broxa has played in a World Championship, CoreJJ has won a World Championship. I don't think Jensen is at his peak right now, obviously. I think he's on the back end of his career. Is still good enough to get the job done in North America, but I think an international, he becomes a liability. Tactical is an unproven player on the international stage, and I think that Tactical is definitely good enough mechanically to perform well in team fights as long as they're like winnable team fights. I don't really expect Tactical to come out of this tournament considered the best AD carry, though. So I think Tactical is probably outside the top 10 for AD carries at the tournament. I would have to maybe I'll do an individual position ranking for each position. I don't look at things the way that a lot of people do. So maybe I would still get a lot of pushback, but that's not anything I'm a stranger to. So let's take a look at champion pools real quick. Impact, Mordekaiser, Shen, Ornn, Set, Gangplank. In the finals in the semifinals against TSM, Impact was kind of a liability, not in terms of play, but in terms of the situations that pick ban dictates. And since I'm bringing that up, I guess I should also talk about the Azael comments real quick. So obviously, Azael is one of the best casters from North America. I respect Azael's opinion on a lot of things. I think that he is normally very reasonable and has good thoughts or intelligent thoughts about everything. But I think that his comments about draft and itemization are fundamentally flawed. So I'll just read what he had to say, or I'll throw it on the screen real quick. So Azael says, draft and itemization are given far too much weight compared to gameplay. They are very important, but so overblown these days. People harp on bad item purchases or perceived draft failures as the reason teams lose in far more games than is relevant. To be clear, I find both itemization and draft super interesting and fun to discuss. They have a significant effect on the game. I'm just tired of seeing people's takeaways from the games being, wow, they lost because they picked Jax, and not how Jax played or how the team played around it. It should and will be discussed, but in my opinion, it currently feels like itemization and draft is just overshadowing all other discussion because it's easy to grab onto a simple statement on X or Y being bad and more difficult to discuss gameplay. So I think there are a few things that we should kind of realize are going on here. So this is in response to LS for the most part, and the people that LS has screaming about this stuff on his behalf. So it's gone past the point of discussion. So personally, in my opinion, I think that draft and itemization are underutilized by professional teams to understand how they should play the game. Azael wants to say, it's about they picked Jax and not how the Jax played or how the team played around it. Unless you have the correct understanding of drafting and itemization, it is impossible for the team to play around it correctly. So the same way that he's saying, like, oh, you shouldn't just be thinking about the pick. You should also see how the pick plays itself out in the game. Well, if you draft and itemize correctly, it's easier to play that way. So I do agree that positional League of Legends and like actually playing out the game is important, obviously, because we need to have winners. But I think that Azael really missed the boat on this one. Like in putting it out in this, saying it this way, is just doing more harm than good. So I was actually talking to McScrag about this. I went up to New Haven to meet with the Yale team last weekend last weekend, and Brendan actually asked me about this. McScrag asked me about this. He said, like, what do you think about the commentary about itemization and drafting and how they're kind of going back and forth right now? And honestly, I think that it's very unfortunate because drafting and itemization they were finally coming to the forefront and being discussed. But now when somebody like Azael comes out in North America and says like, oh, it's really not as important as they're saying, it's going to do a lot of harm for the League of Legends community in North America, because the vocal minority is what LS represents, not the actual dominant opinion, which is like, oh, I can outplay anything. That's really how most League of Legends players look at things. So it's very unfortunate. I think that this is a big problem. That's all I'll say. That's all I will say about it for now. But big issue in North America specifically. So let's get back into this. So like I said, Team Liquid, I think that they have a pretty good roster right now for the play-in stage, but I don't think that the group stage is going to do. I don't think they will do well in the group stage. So I expect Team Liquid to finish in one of the top 3 spots and be competitive in the play-in stage. That's my outlook for them. Mad Lions, I think, should be the favorite in this group. I've seen some people saying like Mad Lions is significantly better than Team Liquid, and I think the only way that you can come to that conclusion is if you prefer their style, because Mad Lions is more like G2, more like C9, flashier gameplay. People enjoy watching that more. So, like, I get how they could kind of say that. They have been playing Akali. They play a lot of Lee Sin, Nidalee, Graves. In the top lane, Arome is not a great player by any stretch of the imagination, and was kind of dominated by Finn. Well, not dominated, outplayed by Finn, even though Arome was on the carry side of all the matchups. I also think that Mad Lions places the correct amount of weight on Senna, which is going to be very important at Worlds. I think Mad Lions will do really well in the group stage, or in the play-in stage. In the group stage, I think that they will have some very close games, some like high octane games between teams that are like more like themselves stylistically, because styles, like what they say in boxing, styles make fights. And when you have a Team Liquid a team like Team Liquid, which is slower against Mad Lions, one of those styles will win out. When you have 2 high octane teams or 2 macro teams, it's just the way that the game is going to go. So like when you see Team Liquid against TSM, most of the time it's going to be a slower game. I know that's not exactly what happened in the playoffs, but that's what you would normally expect to happen. For example, when 2 Korean teams play each other, 2 of the slower Korean teams. So that's basically it. Mad Lions, I think, is the easy favorite in Group A. Next up, the third team from Group A that we're going to discuss, and the team that I think is the most interesting, is Supermassive. So Armut, Kakao, Bolulu, Zeitnot, and Snowflower. So Snowflower is an import from Korea. Kakao is an import from Korea. Kakao was probably the best jungler in the world at one point. Kakao was a carry jungler when carry junglers were unique. So this is the perfect meta for Kakao. I think that Kakao can carry against Broxa. I think that Kakao can carry against Shadow. So I would not be surprised if Supermassive came out as the number 1 seed. I think it's unlikely, but I wouldn't be surprised. It wouldn't be. It's definitely within the range of outcomes. So I think Supermassive as a second or third, as a top 3 seed is almost guaranteed. I'd be shocked if they did not make it into the next part of the play-in stage. Legacy Esports is up next. Tapoon is an import. BABIP, which is a baseball statistic. Pretty funny. Halo, Tally, Race, and Isles. So they switch between their mid laners, which is a big problem in my opinion. I do not like that. They do play Nidalee, they do play Graves, but it seems like they prioritize other champions more. They get Bard banned against them a lot, which is a good sign because Bard is a very important champion in this meta. But I don't think that they're going to do well in the play-in stage. This would be shocking to me. And then last up we have INTZ. So we have Tay, Shinny, Envy, Macau, and Redbert. Redbert is another very good Bard player relative to Brazilian players. I don't think that it's going to be a big difference maker at the play-in stage, but if they win games, I would not be surprised if it was because of good Bard plays. They get Senna banned against them a decent amount, so they do like Senna. There is a Jhin game. I don't like Jhin. They play a lot of Nautilus and Leona, which is going to be exploitable by a lot of these good teams. So I don't like their prospects for making it out of the groups at all. They're probably the third or fourth best team from Brazil, but they had a good split and they made Worlds. So good for them. I don't have much hope for them though. Group B, I think, is a lot closer than Group A. Group A, I think we have 3 actual teams that have chances, and then just 2 teams that made it. In Group B, LGD, obviously, the 4th team from China. I love LGD. Peanut is the best jungler in this group. Peanut is the best jungler in the group stage, in the play-in stage. We've seen Peanut play very well against high-quality junglers in China. Peanut is a very good carry jungler. Plays Nidalee, plays Graves. Has Nidalee banned against him almost every single game. Longshi is an okay player. I don't think that the teams in the play-in stage will be able to exploit Longshi's champion pool because they default towards Ornn whenever they're in in a matchup with a different style of top laner, like a carry top laner like the Shy. They'll play Ornn, they'll play Volibear. Leona is very popular for LGD, and it makes sense with carry junglers because you're going to be missing out on some of that engage. But I don't love Leona and Nautilus right now. So I guess it's kind of something I'll have to think through, is like, I know that the carry jungle meta is still here, but how does that negatively impact the rest of the team? So I'll have to think through that a little bit more. But LGD will LGD is 99% making it out of this group. Next up, we have PSG Talon. I remember this team from the PCS VCS slates that they had on DraftKings. Their jungler is a very good player relative to the region. So they have Hanabi, River, Tank, Unified, and Kaiwing. Their jungler plays Nidalee, Graves, Kindred. So if we're getting DraftKings slates, it'll be important to know that River is a carry jungler, because even if it's like Peanut against River, they both have really good chances to do well in a win, but they're both going to look like garbage in losses probably if they go up against each other. I expect Peanut to win that matchup, but if Peanut was to lose, Peanut would look bad because of how the game was played out, not because Peanut necessarily played bad. We have a lot of Nidalee bans, Twisted Fate bans against them. So it's always a good spot to look for bans, because that's what when other teams are doing their research, that's how they think they can beat this team. We also have Jhin being played a decent amount, and I hate Jhin, so that's a negative for me. Next up, we have Rainbow 7. Rainbow 7 is from Latin America. They were talking up their jungler on the selection show, I guess it's called. So this is a jungle focused team, but the jungler isn't a Graves Nidalee main, which is a problem in my opinion. I think that it significantly limits the upside of their team. So when we're looking at bans, Twisted Fate, Lee Sin, Hecarim, Senna, Lucian, Lilia, these are a lot of the first 3 bans that they face, which means those are probably their better champions. or the other team is just like terrified of that portion of the meta. We do see some Akali, we see some Ashe, we see Zoe, Azir, Galio, Lucian. So that's a pretty good sign for them. Actually, no, they do play Akali, but they've been letting Akali through to the other team and beating it. So that's scary. It'll be interesting to see how they kind of approach these teams at Worlds. Rainbow Seven, I think, has a legitimate chance to make it into the second part of the play-in stage. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Unicorns of Love, I think, are probably the most overrated team right now because they are 39-2 in their last 41 matches. Being dominant in your region does not mean anything for Worlds. Some people might agree with me on that, disagree with me on that, but that's an easy angle to take. Would be go contrarian against Unicorns of Love because everybody's going to be on them. When they played against Gambit, they banned Akali 4 games in a row. That is not good in my opinion because Akali she's good enough to get first picked really. It's difficult to hide her like if the other team continuously tries to counter pick it, but I don't like that at all. I think that you need to either have good strategies to beat Akali or pick it yourself. It's very dangerous to approach it that way. In terms of bans against them, there's a lot of Thresh bans, Lucian bans, Orianna bans, so they're targeting the mid laner. We see Hecarim, Kha'Zix, Nidalee, Graves. So a lot of the correct champions. See Karthus, Nocturne, Gragas. I haven't watched enough to really know how they win a lot of their games. Let me take a look at one of the scoreboards. So No Man's on Akali had 14 kills. That's pretty good. That's a function of the champion more than the player, I think. In the finals, we have mid Tristana, which is very interesting. They pulled out Sona Lux. I mean, it seems like they're a pretty well-rounded team in terms of carrying. Like you want to see you want to see their jungler, AD carry, and mid laner all having like the best game for their team because that means they have multiple ways to win. Like if you look at a team like LGD, Peanut goes insane more often than most other junglers on their team. On other junglers on their respective teams. So last team is V3 Esports. Their mid laner plays a lot of Galio, so that's typically banned against them. Set is normally banned against them. Sion is normally banned against them. They play a lot of... So this player is not a carry jungler, in my opinion. I'm not seeing a lot of the... Like, I guess the easiest way to identify a carry jungler is going back to, like, 10.7, 10.8, 10.9 and seeing what champions they're playing. On 10.8, they played Rek'Sai and Graves, but they lost the match. So that's not a good sign. And then Graves was not banned against them very often. They banned Nidalee. They banned Graves. They banned Kindred. Like, that's not really what I want to see. So I think V3... They probably have chances to do okay at this level of the competition, but I think LGD, Talon, Unicorns of Love are the three favorites. I think the second and third spots are wide open, though. I think if R7, Rainbow 7 or V3 made it out of this group, I would not be surprised at all. So next up we have the group stage. Group stage. All right, so right now there are 3 teams in each group. The play-in teams are like forced to go into certain spots if it's like LPL. If LGD makes it out, LGD will be playing in Group C. I'm not going to go through all that. Really not that important. At this point, at least. So let's go group by group. So first up we have G2, Machi, and Suning. everybody's on G2. I think it's an easy spot to target. I think Sunning would be a good bet to win the group. So when I see those lines, I'll let everybody know what I think about that. Machi is another team from the VCS PCS slates that we had played. I forget what side I was on. It looks like they may have changed their roster as well. Also, I think one of the play-in teams changed their roster around, and I can't see it from Gamepedia to understand it, because I don't think that those players were in the match history. So that might be an oversight on my part, but I'm not gonna go crazy looking for all that information. So yeah, G2, Wonder, Yonkos, Caps, Perks, Mickey. They're a good team. I've been on them for months. When people were saying, oh, G2 is not good anymore, Rogue and Mad Lions are the best teams in Europe, I was kind of just laughing at that for most of the split. At one point, I did think Mad got pretty close to G2, but at the end of the day, G2 was the best team, so I should have just trusted my gut the whole time. Suning against G2, we have Bin, SFM, Angel, Huanfeng, and Sword Art. Bin is a carry top laner that I think can beat Wonder in lane, like without much difficulty. It's going to be matchup dependent, but definitely a possibility. SFM is better than Yonkos, period, full stop. No reason to even go any further than that. Caps against Angel. I'm low on Angel as a player in general, but I think that's just like an unwarranted bias at this point on my part. I think that Angel has a ton of experience against Knight and Xie and like all of these other very good mid laners from the LPL, like Rookie. So I am not afraid of Caps in that matchup specifically, but I do think Caps is the better player until I see otherwise. And like I said, I could be completely wrong about that. So we could be three players on Sunning being better at this point. Huanfeng against Perks. Huanfeng is the better player right now. I'm not sure about Perks at his peak against Huanfeng at his peak, but I think Huanfeng has not shown their upside so far. So everybody knows Perks. Perks is a known quantity. But I think Huanfeng could just be better at this point in time than Perks. Sword Art against Mickey, that's pretty even, I think. Sword Art is a good playmaker though, and is probably the shot caller of the team. I don't know that for certain, but when you watch the games, it seems to be the most vocal, and when they have their post-game reactions, Sword Art is often screaming. So that's a lot of fun. In terms of who I expect to win this group, I would say I think Sunning wins this group, and I will be betting Sunning to beat G2 in their matches against one another. I think that'll be a good spot to exploit for DraftKings as well. Group B, we have Damwon, JDG, and Rogue. Rogue, I think, is going to have a difficult time at Worlds. I don't think they are... I just don't think they're a very good team. But we'll go in order. So, Nogri, Canyon, Showmaker, Ghost, and Beryl. Last year at Worlds, Damwon Gaming lost to G2 in the quarterfinals. They upgraded their bot lane from Nuclear to Ghost. Damwon plays a lot of Senna when they have to. Well, not when they have to, when they can. Beryl has an interesting champion pool. We do see a lot of Pantheon from earlier in the split. So Pantheon, Bard, Poppy, Sejuani, like a lot of interesting picks because they play Senna so well. They also play the Kate Lux, Kalista, Alistair. They play all the champions you want a team to play, and they've been a big part in determining the meta that the rest of the world has kind of latched onto. Nogri is a very good top laner, a carry top laner as well. So when we're looking at Damwon last year Damwon last year compared to this year, I think that it will be easier for Damwon to execute this year. Last year, Kalista was a very important, Kai'Sa was a very important pick, and Kai'Sa is low ranged and brings a lot of question marks into the laning phase. I think as long as they play the laning phase straightforward and just depend on their ability to team fight better than everyone else, I think that'll be very good for them. JDG, I think, is probably a good value bet to win this group. I haven't seen the numbers yet, but I'm assuming when it gets posted, Damwon will be number 1, JDG number 2, Rogue number 3. JDG, I think Zoom is just as good as Noguri, probably, but they play different styles. So when they play one another, it'll be interesting to watch. Zoom loves Volibear and Ornn. Can play other things, I'm sure, but that's really the go-to style for them because they have Kanavi. So Kanavi, probably the best jungler in the world. And in this meta, might be the most important player for their team in the entire world. So I think that's really what the focal point will be. I hope that the meta stays the same because it'll be very interesting to see that play out at the world's stage. Typically, teams get a little bit more passive and conservative on the world stage because they don't want to look stupid in front of everybody watching. But if JDG can stick to the carry jungle meta, I think that they will be the favorites to come out of this group. The one oversight on my part might be Canyon against Kanavi. I don't have a good read on Canyon. I've been wrong about Canyon for most of the split. I think that Canyon is better than I give credit for. But when I see Noguri and Showmaker, it makes the jungler's life so much easier. So I am somewhat skeptical, but I think I just could be flat out wrong about that. Last up, we have Rogue. So Finn. Finn is going to get dominated by Noguri and Zoom probably, unless they start drafting for Finn and playing around Finn. If Finn is asked to play weak side, I think it's going to be a huge problem for Rogue. Inspired and Larson are a good jungle mid duo, but who would you rather have? Inspired and Larson or Canyon and Showmaker? Or would you rather have Inspired and Larson or Kanavi and Yagao? I think that the choices are clear. So the strength of Rogue is mid jungle. The strength of Damwon is mid jungle. The strength of JDG is top jungle, but their mid jungle is better than Rogue still as well. So I think that's concerning for Rogue's chances of getting out of the group. Maybe they figure out some kind of way to play in this meta that creates advantages for them in the early game. Maybe they can force Damwon or JDG into bad pick bans through draft, but it just seems very unlikely for me. Group C, we have Fnatic, Gen G, and TSM. So Fnatic, I think, is probably the second best team from Europe. Maybe the third best team. I think Mad Lions is probably better than Fnatic. I know that Mad Lions didn't play well when they got knocked out of the playoffs, but I think their upside is higher than Fnatic right now. Self-made, Bwipo, Self-made, Nemesis, Reckless, and Hylissang, and they have Magifelix as their backup mid laner. I think it's a non-zero possibility that Nemesis gets benched for Magifelix going into next year, but I don't know if they would pull the trigger on that before or during Worlds. And then also if Fnatic is like dead in the group stage, they might just get Magifelix in for some experience on the world stage. I wouldn't be surprised about that either. So Bwipo, I think, is a good top laner in Europe and is interesting on the international stage because of the different kinds of picks that Bwipo is willing to play. Also, Bwipo has the finals experience when they lost to Invictus Gaming. So that is a positive as well. But I think Selfmade's overrated right now. Selfmade's definitely a good player and one of the best one of the best junglers from Europe, but Selfmade is not as good as a lot of the other junglers from China and Korea. Gen G, we have Rascal, Clid, BD. Actually, I should probably finish up on that. Nemesis, I think, is a big liability. This is like Nemesis against Bjergsen. I would rather have Bjergsen. Nemesis against BDD. I'd rather have BDD. So I think that's probably where they can get exploited. Reckless plays well at international events, and Fnatic will often have like these off-the-wall compositions in the bot lane that just like counter the meta somehow. So they used to play Garen Yuumi and stuff like that. If they throw a curveball, I think it'll be through the bot lane and the top lane. So next up we have Gen G, Rascal, Clid, BDD, Ruler, and Life. People are saying that Ruler and Life are the best bot lane at Worlds, or at least one of the best bot lanes at Worlds. I think that's wrong. Ruler is very good. I'm not convinced by Life. Life is definitely not one of the best supports at Worlds. Kind of just gets carried around by Ruler, I think. and the rest of the team. Rascal against Bwipo, Rascal's probably better, but Rascal is kind of like another player that I don't have a good read on. Clid is probably... I think Clid's probably the best jungler in this group right now. I think that Clid is definitely better than Spica and might be better than Selfmade, but Clid this year has not been asked to be the carry for the team very often. So let me explain that. So when we look at the champion pool, for most of the split, we were seeing Volibear, Olaf, Set, Lee Sin, Sejuani. But then more recently we have Hecarim, Graves, Nidalee. Against T1, we had Graves and Nidalee, which was very good. We have seen the Evelynn, Lilia, so Clid's playing all the right champions on this patch. I just think the spring performance of Clid wasn't great, was getting dominated in their matchups against the best teams, but now I think Clid can really prove himself on the international stage. T1 really missed Clid this year, especially in the summer playoffs. Then we have BDD. BDD is probably one of the 3 or 4 best mid laners at Worlds. Maybe 4 or 5. But plays all the champions you need to play. There's not really much else to say about that. TSM, I think TSM was pretty unlucky. Having Genji in their group because it automatically takes away... Actually, TSM was pretty lucky because they only have to deal with Fnatic right now. But it seems like they will also have to play against LGD if LGD makes it out of the play-in stage. So that's the unlucky part of it. If LGD makes it out, I think Genji and LGD are the easy favorites to come in first and second. I think Fnatic probably has a better chance than TSM to make it into the knockout round. However, I think TSM has a better chance to make it out of the group stage than Rogue and FlyQuest. And that's because Broken Blade can play carry top laners and can play Aurelia really well. I think Aurelia is a way that TSM can kind of counter this meta. I'm not, like I said before, I'm not sure about the Aurelia versus Akali matchup, but I think that is going to be an important trade that a lot of teams make in drafts. So Broken Blade I think has high upside. Spica I think has all the potential to be just as good, if not better than Selfmade. We've only seen Spica really doing well and not carrying, because Bjergsen's been the one carrying. But like when we see things like Set and Shen and Olaf, we can lose sight of the fact that Spica, when Spica originally came in, Spica was set up to be a carry jungler. It just doesn't fit with the team. So I think Spica can play that role within a team if asked to. But that's the next evolution of Spica, is showing the Graves, Nidalee, Kindred, those kinds of champions on the international stage. That's what's going to separate Spica, because Spica is one of the better Nidalee players in North America. Then we have Bjergsen. Obviously, Bjergsen is the best mid laner from North America right now, and is going to be the most important player for TSM. I think TSM against Fnatic, they have the advantage through mid lane. TSM against Genji, obviously Genji has the mid lane advantage, and then LGD against TSM, I think Xie is better than Bjergsen, pretty clearly. So, unlucky. And then in the bot lane, I think Doublelift and Biofrost can compete with Fnatic, and they can compete with LGD. But Genji is better in that lane. So let's go to the last group. Last group, we have DRX, FlyQuest, and Top Esports. Top Esports, if China disappoints once again and has their top seed crash out in the group stage, that'd be tragic. 369, one of the best top laners at Worlds. Karsa is overrated at this point, but is still a very good jungler. But Karsa is not the best jungler in this competition. Probably the 4th or 5th best jungler at Worlds, especially in this meta. Knight, probably the best mid laner at Worlds. Definitely top 2. Definitely top 2. Probably the best. Jackie Love is overrated right now as well, but still I think Jackie Love is one of the top 4 or 5 AD carries at Worlds. I think Jackie Love really shines on supportive champions, like Senna are very good champions for Jackie Love. They have been playing some Jin. Jackie Love is good at Ezreal. Jackie Love is obviously good at Aphelios. I hope we don't see the Kai'Sa. I think Kai'Sa's a trap. And Kai'Sa is the champion that Jackie Love has a skin from when Jackie Love won the World Championship. So Jackie Love also has the world's experience. And then Yu-Yanjia is probably the big question mark for Top Esports. That's the only way I see them doing poorly, is if Karsa underperforms, Yu-Yanjia underperforms. I think Jackie Love will be able to be consistent. Knight will be consistent. And then 369 is volatile as well. For DRX, we have Doran, who I don't have a good read on. Pyosik, who I think is an underrated jungler. Chovy, who is one of the best mid laners in the world. Deft, who is dealing with some back injuries right now, which makes it difficult to sit for extended periods of time. I know, because I just hurt my back. And, like, playing League of Legends, like, you have to think to yourself, do I even want to sit there for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and have to deal with the back pain? And then we have Keria. Keria is probably the most underrated player in the world right now. I think Keria is the best support in the world. Keria is only 17, but has the playmaking upside that you either have it or you don't. Like, you can't take someone like Biofrost and just turn him into the best playmaker in the world. Keria has that potential and that upside. I hope that we are able to see that throughout the group stage, because that's really the only way that I could see DRX beating Top Esports head-to-head, is that difference between Keria and Yu-Yanjia. And also, like, you can draft well against Top Esports and try to exploit Yu-Yanjia and 369, get the better jungle matchup, Pyosik against Karsa, which is definitely possible because Karsa is going to default onto the Lee Sin or Volibear or Hecarim or like one of these tankier champions. Karsa has been playing more Nidalee and Graves, but that's not Karsa's identity. So that is a distinction I think we should realize. And then last up we have FlyQuest. So Solo was exploited in the finals against TSM. I don't think Solo played as bad as the scorelines would indicate, but it is pretty unfortunate that it happened and everybody was watching. Santorin is a good player, but is probably the will be the third or fourth best jungler in the group. Power of Evil is a good mid laner, but the third or fourth best in their group. Wild Turtle is a bad AD carry in my opinion. Ignar is a good support. Ignar might be better than Yu-Yanjia. So I love Ignar style. Power of Evil and Ignar made it pretty far in Worlds when they were on Misfits. So they have Worlds experience that they can kind of lean on. But Wild Turtle is a huge problem for FlyQuest. So I expect them to lose in this group stage. But that's basically it for this video. So we went through all the groups from the play-in stage and the group stage. When some other information comes out about Worlds, like the futures lines, the odds to get out of groups and all that stuff, I'll make another video. I'm planning on doing another video probably today or tomorrow with Billy Von Elds for the NFL. I have another video coming out with some other people for League of Legends content. And that's about it. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know who you think has the best chances to upset in the group stage or the play-in stage. And that's it. So thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.